Hey everybody, haven't made a video in a while and I'm gonna start doing my very best to do a video every week. And so this video is gonna be the top succulents that do great for beginners and the top succulents that most beginners kill. So anyway, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. These are Haworthia. So Haworthia are very forgiving. There are lots of different looking ones, but when you buy them in the store, you'll see the word Haworthia, and this happens to be a pretty cool one that's made a ton of babies, and it's nice and rigid. It's pretty cool. You've probably seen this one in the store. It's just a darker green, but it's called Zebrina because it looks kind of like a zebra. This just happens to be a variegated one, and I didn't want to show you my dark green one because I left it in the sunlight and I burned all the tips, and you can see actually the tips are kind of burnt on this one. So one of the cool things about Haworthias is that they don't need tons and tons and tons of sunlight. So this is one of the plants that if people say they're going to keep a succulent in the house, I tell them to get a Haworthia because they can typically deal with indoor lighting without stretching out and getting all ugly. So you can see they have different looks to them. There's all different types, but they kind of look similar except for this weirdo. So this is called a Haworthia couperii, and they actually call it alien eggs. And it's actually got a bloom on it, but it's really cool because if you hold it up to the light, you can see through it. Well, it's not sunny outside, but anyway, so yes, that is a Haworthia, but typically you'll see something that looks kind of like this. Like, hey, is that an aloe? But it's not quite an aloe. They're typically a little bit harder. This is actually a baby I pulled off these guys right here. So those are Haworthias also. And sorry about my mess, but this is a great beginner succulent because they're very forgiving when it comes to watering. Now, if you look closely, you can see that these lower branches are kind of skinny and not so fat like these top ones. So really this one could use some water. That one's okay, but honestly, I should keep it somewhere with a little bit more shade. And most of my Haworthias, I actually do keep them in the greenhouse, kind of shaded, where they only get morning sun. And a few of them I even keep under a shelf. Like, let me show you an example. This is a Haworthia. It's a little more of a rare one. It's variegated. And then I thought I had there is another one under there. It's hiding. But this is underneath the shelf where they get almost no light at all. So just maybe a little morning sun. But Haworthias are great because they can be more forgiving if you accidentally give them a little too much water. I've actually never killed one from overwatering before. And typically you'll know if they need water. The bottom leaves just get a little thin. This one could use some. If you ever get this kind and they look plump, don't you give it any water. Only give it water if it looks kind of like maybe the bottom leaves are kind of looking thin or deflated. But this one does not need any at all. And if they look pretty good and they're not getting burnt tips, then they're in a happy place. So Haworthia is my number one on the list of 4 succulents that I think people would do great if they're looking for something that's a beginner succulent that they don't want to kill. So let's get to number 2. Okay, succulent number 2 that is great for beginners, jade plant. So I know you guys have seen these before. Sorry, mine are kind of dusty, but this is a jade plant I've had quite a while, and they can get big. I've seen some people with really huge ones, so I've had this one a while. Actually, it's 2 plants now that I think about it, but I've taken these off the shelves to show you guys. Jades are pretty easy. I've noticed that anything that's kind of a darker green in regards to succulents, they tend to be a little bit more lenient with water, and they tend to do better indoors if you're going to have one indoors. This is another type of jade. There are 3 weirdly shaped ones like this, and it's always hard for me to remember which is which. One's called like ogre ears, one's called Gollum, and one's called like ET fingers, and I can't remember which is which. You can tell this one's thirsty, so you probably are going to notice this on a lot of my succulents, that you'll see some stuff that's thirsty. But that's one of the good things about succulents. They can look like this. You water them once, they come right back. Jades are great though because they don't need tons of light. There's a lot of different kinds and they can get pretty big. So some people I've even seen kind of turn them into like a bonsai type thing. And if you remember, well, I don't know how long you guys have been following me, but one of the very first videos I ever made was repotting succulents for beginner, and this was just a teeny tiny thing, and I've had it forever and it's still here. So that is a jade, and it does sit in my greenhouse with these other guys. However, it's in a spot that is only getting morning sun. So same thing with the other one. So afternoon sun is really harsh on jades. So I don't know. I mean, I guess they could probably get used to it, but you may have to water them more. Now this is just a smaller jade, and it's got some variegation on them. Some of them get this bright red on it. I think I have one. Oh, I think I have one over there. I'll show you real quick. Let me see if I can go find it. So I'm sorry if I'm moving fast. Give me 1 second and I'll show you something. Please ignore my mess. Sorry. Okay. See that? That's jade too. So it only gets morning sun, but it's got the red tips on it, so it's got a little stress color. So jade can be really pretty. I've seen some with red, I've seen some with orange. Anyway, so moving on, there's another jade here that you might not see a lot, but this is called trailing jade. So you can plant this in a pot and it will hang down. So this stuff does great in a hanging basket. I just haven't done anything with it yet. And if it's stressed, it turns purple. So you can tell the part that's been in the harsh sun and the part that hasn't. So it can turn purple, and you can see this one also needs water. So when I get off the camera, I will try to do my best to be nice to these guys and water it. But trailing jade is cool. And by the way, all of these are just like regular succulents. You can cut off a piece, stick it in dirt, and in a couple of weeks, typically it will grow roots, and then you have a new plant. Same with these, same with these. Haworthias, usually not. Haworthias make pups on the sides that you can pull off, but jade is a really great plant, and I've seen people have these in their office, and they do well. As long as they get some light. I mean, they need to get, they can deal with fluorescent light like in an office, but, oh goodness, before this video is over, I know I'm going to knock something over. But anyway, jade is a really, really good beginner plant because they are just like the Haworthia. Even if they're not thirsty, like their leaves are plump, that's usually when you know not to water. So like this one, I don't see any wrinkly leaves. Now, sometimes at the bottom when leaves are getting ready to die, they'll get wrinkly, but that's the only one on the whole plant that's wrinkly. So I know that's one that it's just getting ready to shed. But if I watered this now, I know it wouldn't die. Whereas like an echeveria, which we're going to talk about later, if I water this one and it doesn't need it, there's a pretty good % chance that it's going to be dead. So jades are really good. They can do well indoors if they've got some lighting, and you can accidentally give them water when they don't need it, and they usually bounce right back. So that is number 2 of beginner succulents, and let's get to the third one. All right, you guys, don't laugh at my third plant. I will explain, but the third plant that I think is really great for beginners is the snake plant. And you probably heard of these, you've probably seen them. Some are all green. This one's a variegated one. This one is kind of variegated. But they sell these as house plants. They don't need tons of light, and they come in all types. So you don't just have to get a plain old green one. You've probably heard of them before. They sometimes call them mother-in-law's tongues. Now this is a fancier one that I got in California, and it does stay in the greenhouse, but it's also one that gets only morning sunlight. So they don't like the harsh afternoon sun like the other ones. And I'm going to explain to you what happened to these two, but I did get this, I got this in September when I went to visit a friend in California, and I didn't even realize it, but it's making a little baby right here. So this is one way that they reproduce. If you just leave them alone for a while, they will make pups sometimes. But another way they reproduce, which doesn't seem to make sense, is you could literally take a leaf and cut it right here and stick that in the dirt. And it does take a while, but after a while, a baby will pop up. And that's exactly what happened in this case. So I went to a plant swap a while back, and this was just in the dirt by itself, and there was nothing. Well, since then, actually 2 have popped up, but you don't need to pull it all the way off of the end just to get to propagate these. It's really weird. And some people actually stick them in water to get roots, but that's where I got this one from. I do have some more of these in the house. I don't keep many in the greenhouse because it's so sunny in here, but this was a propagation. Someone had this at a plant swap. I want to say it was on the free table, but anyway, this one's kind of cool because it does have some little markings on it, and it looks like as it gets older, it's going to get some yellow around the side, but it's still not the same variety as this, and I don't know the names of all of them, but whatever. Okay, so let me tell you what happened with this one. I know, don't even laugh. So this was a plant that someone gave me, and I left it somewhere where there was a hole in the greenhouse roof, and it got water for a really long time, and I felt horrible because usually you cannot overwater these. They're not picky, but it sat in water for probably a week or 2, and it looked almost dead, but I thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it alone and see what happens. Well, I did, and look, it's got new growth and a baby popped out. So I still think this one's going to come back, but either way, these are hard to kill. So that's one of the things that's great about these. If it doesn't need water and you water it, it's probably going to be fine. Now, if you do what I did and let it sit in like a vat of water for a week and a half or so, or a week even, maybe you'll kill it. But snake plants are great. They're great gifts. They will make babies over time. You can propagate them well, and they do well indoors. So under fluorescent light, just like the rest of these. And this goes along with what I was telling you earlier, where like the darker green plants are, typically the better they will do indoors, or the less light they will need, versus something that's like super, super light, like, the pink ones, or like the light blue, like that. But anyway, snake plant is a great choice, and let's go ahead and get to number 4. Okay, the 4th one I'm going to put on my list for easiest succulents for beginner is, of course, aloe. And everyone knows about aloe vera. And this is such a teeny tiny pot that I had such a little one in, and I'm almost scared to pick it up. I'm probably going to drop it. But I mean, look how fast it multiplies. It needs to be in a bigger pot right now. But aloe vera is easy. Yes, you could have it in the house. It would need to be in a sunny windowsill, but I keep them in here under a little bit of shade. In fact, down here I've got some aloe, and I've got the rest of my aloe underneath other shelves. So we all know about the aloe vera. You cannot just cut a piece off like this and stick that in the dirt like the snake plants. Oh, here's an aloe back here. I forgot all about that one. That one's a really cool one that I got in California. And when it's stressed, it turns bright, bright neon orange. I'll see if I can find a picture. But anyway, aloe vera is a great beginner plant, and plus it's going to make pups for you, and you can just pull those out and you can share them with your friends. So aloe's great, but that's not the only kind of aloe that there are. Anytime you go to like a big box store, really anywhere, you're going to find, well, hopefully you find some different types of aloe. Like this is a cool little spiky aloe, and I mean, it's not sharp, so I mean, it looks spiky, but this is aloe. Now, you can't break it open and use it like you can the aloe vera, although it does have the jelly-like stuff in there. Here's a cool spiky aloe. Oh, and this one's thirsty. So you see how, like, it's floppy like that? Like, it should be firm. Like, this one's pretty firm. Poor thing. Most of these sit under a shelf. So, anyway, This one's thirsty, obviously. Don't ask me the names of these. I cannot remember off the top of my head, and these are not the pots they came in, so I can't tell you. You might see some stuff like this. This is actually a type of aloe. They've got all sorts of ones like this. I see them at like Home Depot and Lowe's and stuff, but I saw one the other day at Walmart, and it was called Blizzard Aloe, and it's almost white. But these guys, even if they're unhappy, you can see like it's starting to make babies, and I could pluck those out as long as I get some roots with them. But it's been sitting under a shelf, and it looks like it has been a little over sunned because it's not got its fattest leaves ever. So I will try to water it after this video. And then I had to show off my variegated aloe vera. This is an aloe vera just like this plant, but it is variegated and they're pretty hard to find. And I have a very good friend in California who was able to hook me up with one of these, and so basically I just want to show it off. And there's one over here I was going to show you real quick. This is actually a type of aloe. Sorry, these little things are falling in through the roof. They come off a tree, but this is a whole bunch of little aloes. I don't exactly know the name of those. And then I'm going to see if I can zoom into this other one. I believe that's called a coral aloe. It needs more sun, but I've been neglecting it. But that is actually an aloe as well. So aloes are wonderful beginner plants because even if they're pretty fat, I've really never seen anyone just kill it unless it's sat in water for a long time. And they're pretty prolific, so they will make babies. This one actually already did make a baby, but I pulled it off and gave it to my friend because these are so hard to find. I had to give her one. But anyway, those are my top 4 beginner succulents, and all of those could do good inside without getting all stretched out and ugly. And all of them are a little more tolerant if you accidentally water them when they don't need it. So just wanted to let you know, that's not an exhaustive list, but I would say those are my top 4. So let's go ahead and let's get into the top 4 that are not super easy, that you might not want to start with if you're a beginner. So I'm going to put these away and I'll be back. All right, so let's talk about plants that are not good for beginners. Well, succulents that aren't. So Echeveria. Echeveria, which just happens to be my favorite type of succulent. They are well known because they have a rosette shape. They stay pretty compact. They stay pretty short for the most part. Now, as they get older, they'll grow a stem, but their leaves are all close together like a rosette. So here's why they're difficult. Their leaves are very thin. And notice I'm not touching them from the top because they have this protective powdery coating and you don't want to rub that off. But their leaves are so thin. They need to hold water in their leaves just like all other succulents. And so unless you can feel that their leaves are really more thin than normal or are kind of wrinkly, they don't need water. And the problem is they can go a long time. So sometimes people get them and they think, oh man, it's been like 2 months. I know it needs water by now, and they'll water it. But if you water these one time when they don't need water, they will die. They get root rot, and then you'll start seeing some like leaves at the bottom. They start becoming kind of translucent, and then before you know it, all the other leaves drop off. So these are really picky, but I will tell you a trick if you just absolutely love these and you want to get them. I always feel the leaves and feel how floppy they are. Not just at the bottom, but at the top. Like these leaves are not super floppy, so that one does not need water. Oh, that one's really firm. No water for that one. These are a little floppy. This one could use water, but I still would not give it water. And this one, not floppy enough. The only time I will give them water is when I notice that the leaves are extremely thin, extremely floppy, or they're wrinkled. Like, let me give you an example. I just got this one the other day at Home Depot. Can you tell the difference? Like, this one's so floppy, it's like and you can see the wrinkles on the back of that one. That one needs water. And I know what you're thinking, why would I let it wait until this long to give it water? Trust me, it's better to do that. It will bounce back and go right back to normal. But if you watered this one right now, it's going to die. So that's one of the reasons why they're not great for beginners, because sometimes it may be weeks, sometimes it's even months for some of mine. And the other thing about these are, they're usually a little more light color, like pink, light blue, green, whatever. They're usually not green. But if they have a rosette shape like this, and they do not get full all day sunlight, they will stretch out and get really, really ugly. And what I mean by stretch out isn't that their stem gets long like this, which that happens normally because the bottom leaves die. Like here's an echeveria, and it's just normal for bottom leaves to die and come off. But what I do mean is that if you put these indoors in like, say, an office building, they'll live, but they'll just kind of, you know. And I do have a picture because actually one of my coworkers left one in his office and it's really stretched out. So I'll try to embed it in here. But echeverias are my absolute favorite. So anything that's rosette is going to need tons and tons of sun. And be very picky. If my main rule is, if you are not 100% sure about watering, just don't. If it looks fine, don't. This actually is one of my favorite ones. I just got that one the other day. But if it's like this and it's very firm, leave it alone. Even if it does feel a little floppy, it's still better to wait just in case. And so going back to my point about how things that are kind of dark green typically do better in, you know, indoors with less lighting. Well, these are the exact opposite. They're not dark green. So these are the ones that need like full all day sun. So doesn't matter the size of them, but if they're rosette shaped or if it says echeveria on the label when you buy it, they gotta have full sun. Otherwise they're gonna stretch out and get ugly. And there is a way to fix that. However, that would be watching another video of mine, and there is a way to do it, but that's another video. So this is number one of succulents you probably don't want to start out with unless you are planning on giving it full sun and being very careful with watering. And if you did absolutely have to keep one of these in the house, you would need them under a grow light. And I don't mean like, you know, under your kitchen light. I mean a grow light where it's fairly close to your plants. I mean that close. Otherwise they're going to stretch out. So like I said, I'm going to try to show you a picture of one of those stretched out ones. So let's move on to number 2 of difficult succulents for beginners. All right. Plant number 2 that may not be great for beginners, string of pearls. Now I do know that these are variegated strings of pearls, but it just happens to be one of the ones in my greenhouse. A lot of them are outside, but strings of pearls are super popular and lots of people want them. And there may be a few you guys out there that say these are super easy, but the majority of the people I talk to say that these are near impossible to keep alive and they always have so many questions about them. But main thing with strings of pearls is they don't need too much light, but they can't stand not enough. And so you really have to find like the perfect place for them. So the non-variegated ones are pretty much green, and I do think I have a few hanging here, but the majority of the ones I have are outside. No, that's a string of teardrops. So there are different strings, like there's the burrow's tail. Okay, these are strings of pearls right here. They should normally be a little bit closer together, but it's not getting quite as much light over here as it should be. And the ones that I have that are pretty good are outside where they get more light. But string of pearls can live in the house. They just need to be in some sort of windowsill, and they will do fine typically. The problem is they need a well-draining soil. So this is 50-50 potting soil and perlite. They have to have a drain hole. Well, that's pretty much true for all succulents, but if they don't, they're not going to make it typically. And also, you need to look at the pearls and don't water them unless you see wrinkles. So I don't see a single wrinkly pearl here. Let me see if I can see one in these other ones. Okay. I'm going to try to zoom in here. let's see. How do I zoom in? Okay. No, well, these aren't string of pearls, but they will kind of look like this. Let's see. This is a string of pearls. Okay. So, okay, there is a wrinkly one. So this one could definitely use water. If you see anything like this and they're not perfectly round and you see some dents in them, yes, it's time to water. You can give them tons of water, but don't water them if they look good. So that's kind of the rule with almost all succulents. If they look good, do nothing. So strings of pearls, I love them. Everybody loves them. They are difficult for a lot of newbies. I'm not saying don't get them, but I am saying you need to really pay attention. They can't have too much light. They can't have not enough. And you cannot water them unless they are thirsty or they'll die. So string of pearls. This is probably my best looking one in here. And the rest, like I said, are outside. So let's move on to the next one. All right, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet because these are not my forte, and the only reason I even have these is because a friend of mine gave them to me. We were exchanging plants and cuttings, and that's why I have them. So I'm not a big fan of the Lithops. I know what you're thinking. They kind of look like butts, whatever. Here's the thing. These are not beginner plants, and yes, they're funny. They're a good gag gift, but people kill them all the time. And I am not going to say I'm an expert on these, but what I will tell you is that the people I know who have these say that they only water them maybe 1 or 2 times a year, and you have to know when their growing season is, and you have to look at what they're doing because they will split open at a certain point and you'll see a new one come out. And if you water them at the wrong time or you water them too often, they are very easily killable. So Lithops, I know they're funny, and if you just want to get one just to be funny and give it to someone, fine, but the chances of a beginner keeping these alive, unless you do a lot of research or really talk to someone and get a lot of info, they just don't usually make it. And so far so good, because all I've done since she gave these to me, I have potted them up and I put them in the hottest, sunniest part of my greenhouse and haven't done anything to them, and so far they are fine. But I'm gonna do a little more research and figure out when it is I actually need to water them, but I know I don't need to be in a hurry. So Lithops, and I think people call these living stones. There is another one called a split rock that are similar, and I think they're kind of similar in care as far as really picky as far with watering and everything. But just wanted to show you the Lithops. These are the only ones I own, and I don't plan on buying anymore, but these are pretty difficult. So let's go ahead and let's get to the next one, which is actually the last one. All right, so here's our last category, and it's actually not something you will see on the label. It's just something you will see with the plants. So I call these chunkies. So anything that is really chubby, chunky, fat-leaved, very fat-leaved, like they call these moonstones. This is, what do they call that? Sedum clavatum. Any of these in this category, and this is actually an echeveria, but can you tell how fat the leaves are? They're just really chunky. So anything with chunkier leaves, like this is an echeveria, but can you tell how it's different from like this echeveria, which has thinner leaves? So I'm putting chunkies in a category, and here's why. Chunkies are plants that they can get tons and tons of water in their leaves. Like this one is totally full. If I watered this thing right now, it would die. This one, totally fine, it would die. Same with this one. Nope, don't water this one, it's fine. In fact, I'm trying to see if, honestly, none of these really, nope. The only way I will water any of these is if I start seeing some of the leaves look wrinkly. Now, remember we talked about how bottom leaves do shrivel up and die. Okay, but here's an example. Okay, that is a healthy leaf, but it's shrivelly. See that? So this one actually could use some water. Let me see if I can find some. Yes, okay. If you see this, it's ready to have water. It can take quite a bit of water. When you do water your succulents, you give them a lot. But that's probably the only chunky one I can see here that I would feel comfortable watering and not worry about it. Well, hold on. This one has, yeah, this one's got a little, uh-oh. I know this one's getting top heavy. I need to cut it and make a new one. I'm gonna lean it against this thing. But anyway, sorry, there's some geese going by. Either way, I still, okay, yeah, this one would probably not die if I watered it. I always, if I'm not 100% sure, I'll water it. But yes, this one could take some water. These, on the other hand, nope. Definitely not here. See how plump they look? If they look plump, like they're almost bursting, they do not need water. So leave these guys alone. These are also ones that typically will need a lot of sunlight because, like I said, they're lighter colored. If they're rosette shaped especially. This is a variation of the kind you've probably heard of called jelly beans. This is a pink moonstones. This is a, blue moonstones. But anyway, it doesn't really matter the category of succulents. Just lump them all together as far as ones with chunky leaves. So if their leaves are chunky, they are much more likely to die if you give them water when they don't need it. Now, if they need it, fine, that's different, but you have to know how to know. And I did try my best of explaining it here really quickly. I do have other videos on how to check them a little bit more thoroughly, but honestly, if you just did what I just did, yes, that one could take some water, that one could too. But chunkies are my final category of ones that you probably wouldn't want to do as a beginner unless you're really certain about being cautious with watering. So anyway, that's going to be the end of my video. I know I talked too much, but thank you guys as always for watching. And like I said, I am going to try to do a video every week. And I would love it if you guys gave me some ideas for videos. And also, I would love it if you would comment and like and subscribe. And by the way, I'm almost to 10,000 subscribers, and hopefully I'll get there pretty soon because I am going to start making more videos or videos more often. When I do get to 10,000 subscribers, I'm going to do a giveaway for everyone who is subscribed. So you guys have a wonderful night. Have a great Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. All mothers and also dog and cat mamas and pet mamas. And I will see you in the next video. Please like, subscribe, and come back to me soon. Bye-bye.